focus, discipline. This is the Zero Excuses podcast. Each and every week, we talk to high-performing, inspirational athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders. We ask powerful questions to extract their tools, strategies, and life lessons for you to crush your excuses, to break out of your comfort zone, and accomplish your ambitious dreams and goals. Here's your host, Kenyon Zitska.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to today's show. We've got a great guest lined up for you guys today. We've got Stephan from Wealthy Dietitian Podcast joining us today to talk about his entrepreneurial journey and also give us some of his thoughts on nutrition, fitness, and health. And, he is one of the few people out there who is given practical, actionable advice and frankly, not blowing smoke up anyone's ass about what they need to do to get their nutrition and their health in order. So before we get into today's conversation with Tony, have a couple quick reminders. First, if you haven't already done so, appreciate it if you went over to iTunes, kenyonzitska.com/iTunes, and left us a rating and review there. And second, if you want to take these strategies, these tools, these tactics, and take them to the next level, implement them into your life, and really get the results that you have dreamt about, you can send me a quick email at kenyon.zitska@gmail.com. I'll send you a quick application. I'll set up a time for us to chat on the phone, and we'll talk about some of the ways that you can take action to get the results that you want. All right, guys, enough of me rambling on. Let's just get into today's conversation with Tony. Tony, thanks for taking time out of your day to join us here on the Zero Excuses podcast. I'm really, really excited to have you on, man.
Dude, what's going on, man? I truly appreciate you having me here. I am super excited to add value with your tribe and your listeners.
Awesome, man. Well, you are a registered dietitian, and there's definitely more below the surface of that. I know you have had quite a entrepreneurial journey. I know you took that big leap a little over a year ago, and why don't you, I can introduce you, but why don't you give our listeners a quick introduction to who you are and what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So my name is Stephan. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been an RD now for, almost 4 years. I'll tell my backstory how I got into everything, but I started personal training at the age of 18. Kind of had an interesting way of how I got into it, not your typical route. So I'm excited to share that story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so started with personal training, then got my RD. I was working for a big box gym, and then, like I said, I'll explain the story, but always had entrepreneurial aspirations. So I launched Stephan Fitness and Nutrition Coaching about almost 2 years ago now. So that's an online coaching company that helps athletes with performance, aesthetic goals, athletes and everyday people, everyday moms and dads and people like that. But I have a lot of media stuff. So I've been in Fox News, Women's Health, Reader's Digest, Huffington Post, all that. My mission is just to spread credible nutrition information. Now that's starting to carry over into the entrepreneurial realms of things too. But yeah, man, it's just my mission is to spread the good word. Because as you know, there's so much not credible, not good information with nutrition and fitness and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're doing. And in the short time that I've been in touch with you, there's been, it's been a pleasure to go to your website and just see some practical, actionable information on your website, and encourage everyone to go check it out. That's not just blowing some bullshit up at, my listeners' ass. It's, I'm definitely going to be checking your stuff out on a regular basis. But let's back up a quick second here. Why are you so passionate about, educating people on fitness and nutrition? How did you first get into that?
Yeah, man. So that's a great question. So for me, it all began when my mother unexpectedly died from a drug overdose. So yeah, I was 18. My father sat me down on our couch in our living room and told me that my mother was found dead at a hotel by herself about a mile away from our home.
Man.
So yeah, my dad, I remember I came home, my dad sat me down and, just trying to process that. Like I said, I was 18. So I was a young man. I had so much pent up anger, rage, sadness. And, this is when he took me into our basement. So we grew up in Warren, Michigan. So a few miles outside of Detroit, Michigan. So blue collar town, smaller house, just, the typical kind of image with that. And
Yeah.
took me into our basement, and he had a Joe Weider bench set. So like an old school Joe Weider bench, some dumbbells with, the sand dumbbells with like duct tape on them. I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh,
those. Yeah. So the old school ones. And he literally I'll never forget this. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, I want this to be an outlet for you. We can't get your mom back. She's never coming back, but I want this to be the outlet, instead of drugs, instead of fighting, instead of, taking all that anger and rage I felt at a young age and using it in a negative way. He created that as my outlet. So, I mean, dude, could you imagine that? Here you are, 18 years old, all this testosterone pumping, right? Being ill-equipped to handle the trauma that was going on, being ill-equipped to handle that emotion. Your dad tells you your mother's gone and she overdosed on drugs.
I don't mean to interrupt, but did you have any sort of other, deep troubles, up to that point, or was that kind of your first taste of adversity?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked. So definitely there were a lot of rough years leading up to that. So my mother had left home when I was about 14.
Mm-hmm.
My father had to file bankruptcy on our home before we potentially lost it. My father was my role model very early on and still is. Every time I'm like, man, I'm not going to get choked up talking about it, and then I get choked up. But, my dad was working 2 jobs just to help us get by. I was working weekends in Detroit at a young age, helping us, there were some Christmases, man, that just, I remember not wanting to get out of bed. Because it was such an empty feeling. My mother was gone, we were kind of just struggling to get by. We had our home and we had each other. But it was a struggle at times. So, I remember one time, like I said, my mother had, addiction, and she struggled with some things. My dad was standing outside of our front porch, and he was looking outside, and I could hear someone screaming and yelling at him. And I'm like, Dad, what's going on? And he told me, don't come over here. You don't need to see this. Right. And of course, being I forgot how old I was, 14, 15. Of course, I go over there and I see what's going on. And I remember my mother was being put in the back of an ambulance, and you could tell she was intoxicated, inebriated, something was going on. She was not her normal self. And she was just screaming at my dad, like how much she hated him and all these things. And she was being forcefully put in the back of this ambulance. And I stopped for a minute because I was like so entranced with what was going on. I just looked around and I saw all the neighbors out, and they were just watching. So instead of going to Fox or CNN for their evening entertainment, we were the evening entertainment. So yeah, there are a lot of things like that. And man, something's very interesting that studies show that any type of trauma that you go through, it doesn't matter what it is, it elicits the same response in our brain with the fight or flight mechanism. So, maybe someone listening to this podcast right now is going through some sort of challenge or adversity, and they're can kind of relate to that, just feeling of like helplessness, feeling lost, feeling like dealing with doubt, scarcity mindset, insecurity. I just want them to know that they're not alone. I've been there. I know what that feels like, so I can totally relate with that. So I realized I always had a chip on my shoulder, because I never wanted to be in that position again. I never wanted to feel like, I was out of control of the situation occurring to me, or I feel like I could lose my house again. So I became a personal trainer at the age of 18 to help me cope with my mother's death. Fitness had such a positive impact on my life. I wanted to use that skill to help others and to, help them deal with adversities and challenges they were going on. And I didn't want to just, stop there and be a trainer. I wanted to go even further. I wanted to be a registered dietitian, which was all fantastic. And I thought in my mind, like, hey, I'll go get the most amount of education possible, and that will help me just, crush it. It'll help me start my own business, do all those great things, help as many people as possible. But I realized very quickly, all it got me initially, it got me some education, some skills in that, but it got me $40,000 in student loan debt. So, here I was, a young man, my mother was gone. I always thought, I walked around thinking like I could have some sort of addictive gene in me, passed down from my mother or whatever, because I saw how she struggled with that. My dad gave me a basement to work out in. That was my outlet. We almost got kicked out of our home. We had no Christmas at times. I thought that channeling all these frustrations into getting more education would help me be more successful. And really, like with starting a business, but really it just got me debt. So it wasn't until I met my first mentor, Bedros Keuilian, that my life totally changed. And I'll never forget this. I sat in his office in Chino Hills, California. I had to fly out there. I literally spent the last dollars I had in my bank account to invest in his mentorship, invest in his coaching. I flew out to California, scared out of my mind. With tears in my eyes, I was telling him the story. I'll never forget. He turned to me and said, Tony, you walk through the fire so you can lead others. And now the best way you can honor your mother's death is by making it your duty and mission to help others with fitness, nutrition, and then, eventually led to entrepreneurship. That's when everything changed. That was that was the catalyst that sparked me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's very inspiring. I want to back up a quick, just a moment or two to what you just said about spending your last dollar on coaching and mentorship. And I mentioned this the other day that you're either going to invest time or money into becoming successful. What at that point, what went through your mind? How did you, rationalize spending that last little bit, knowing that if this didn't work, you didn't know where to turn after that? Like, how there's a lot of people out there that get hung up at that point. I just want to dig into that a little bit. How can other people who might be at a similar point, more comfortably make that type of decision? You know what I'm getting after?
Yeah, of course. No, it makes perfect sense, man. And dude, so kind of why I shared that backstory there was to show you that my mindset around money was all messed up, dude. I had total scarcity mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Money was to me this esoteric thing reserved for only like doctors and lawyers and like whatever football players, So I had total scarcity issues with money. To me, money in the bank was security. Right. So here I was about 25 and, I was working full time for a big box gym as a dietitian. I was doing well, but I realized I knew all along that I wanted more. I wanted to have my own business, create freedom in my life, all that good stuff, and help more people than I could just by working at a gym in Novi, Michigan. So I tried to do it on my own. I tried to research, I tried to Google, I tried to figure it all out. And then I found one person said this, one person contradicted them. The other person said they were both idiots and to go do this. And I just felt the anxiety of overwhelm. So I realized, I came to a point to where I realized if I would have done it on my own, I would have done it at this point. So I was selling myself a lie that, I'll figure it out on my own. Okay, I'll put some things together. I'm just too busy right now. I just realized if I would have done it on my own, I would have already been doing it. So that's when I bit the bullet and said, you know what? I'm going to invest the money, the literally last money I had in my bank account. I had to call and authorize the charge after the charge went through because it was paid in full for a year of mentorship. I looked at my bank account, my Chase mobile app, dude. It said $0, and I thought I was going to pass out. I laid down on the floor of my house, and it was a brand new house I just purchased. I had no furniture. I just laid on the floor as like a Russian nausea rushed across me. But it was just the realization that I was going to invest the money to cut down the wasted time, and that I knew I wasn't moving forward, trying to keep myself accountable to those big goals.
Yeah. So, and are you married? Do you have kids or what was that? Go ahead.
Yeah. So definitely at that time it was, I was about to be engaged. So I knew I was going to ask my girlfriend, who's, my girlfriend for the longest time, who's now my wife, to marry me. So yeah, dude, at the time here it was, 25, finally doing well in life. Like, I had some good things rolling. I had a nice apartment. I drove a Cadillac, which only people in Michigan drive Cadillacs, but I had a Cadillac. I was doing well. I was comfortable. I was like, I felt like life was like rolling for me. I just bought a beautiful brand new home. So here I was, and then it was like, I knew I was going to ask this girl to be my wife and, buy a ring and do all that good stuff. So it was like, here I was. It took everything in my body to like just break away from that scarcity mindset and go all in. But it was also the expression of burning the boats. I knew by taking that large 5-figure investment and investing it in coaching, I was sealing the deal. There was no going back. Like I could not spend that amount of money, which was just crazy to me at the time, and not do the work that he was going to ask me to do. So I knew I was locking myself in.
Yeah, it's like you're announcing to the universe, like you're making this commitment, and come hell or high water, you're gonna make it work. I could totally relate. Now, when when you were making this investment, how involved were you with bringing your girlfriend, soon to be fiance, into that conversation? How much did you involve her? Because I think that's another source of resistance of going all in or making investment is, our wives, our fiancés, our girlfriends, having that tough conversation. What did that look like?
Yeah, man, totally. So I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate that my wife, Andrea, who was my girlfriend and, my fiance at the time. So we've been together since I was 20. So she saw me start off, we met at the first gym I worked at, which was in LA Fitness in Warren, Michigan, when I was being paid a whopping $6 per session. So she saw me start at the very beginning, and she knew ever since we first met, I always talked about owning my own business. And she, again, I'm very blessed that she was just very supportive, man. So like in college, when I ran out of money one time, she was the one who bought my first lab coat for me to go to my clinical rotations as a dietitian. So I was very blessed. She was always supportive. I explained to her what I wanted to do, and she was just 100% in my corner. And she knew that no matter what, I had to do this for me. If I just stayed in that comfortable job and just gave us the cushy, comfortable life, and I never went for it, that would hurt much more than me going for it and falling on my face and then trying to figure it out. So she just knew I had to go for this for me to be fulfilled. So I'm so blessed. She supported me every step of the way, and she still does to this day.
Yeah, like I said, that can be a big source of resistance, and I've screwed that part up more times than I care to admit with my wife. But I just wanted to highlight that for our listeners because like I said, it can be a big source of resistance. So now that you've successfully transitioned, looking back on your journey, what would you do different, or what advice would you might offer someone who would walk up to you and you're working out in a hotel gym and tell them about what you do? What advice would you give to them if they're thinking about making this jump, aside from just do it? I mean,
Sure.
That's what I tell people too. But
sure. Well, what the name like No Excuses podcast, I feel like the phrase "just do it" just coincides with that so well, man. But yeah, dude, I would say just hire somebody. Like, do your research, find someone in your field. For me, it was Bedros Keuilian, which led to other mentors, but find someone in your field who's doing what you want to do, and realize that success leaves clues. So just like what we alluded to earlier, that instead of wasting time trying to figure it out on your own, trying to spin your wheels, trying to put all the pieces together, going through like failures and frustrations on your own and dealing with all that, just take what resources you have, whether it's money in the bank, whether it's piecing together credit cards, whether it's exchanging time, right, for value, whatever, like trading with someone who can mentor you, whatever, but invest in yourself, man. Like, so many people invest in things like the lottery or, like just new TVs or new clothes. It's like, that stuff's cool, but like, if you're gonna, this is what I always say: if you're gonna bet on anything, don't bet on the lottery. Bet on yourself, right? Go all in on yourself. Invest in someone who can cut down the waste of time. The expression I give to my mentor clients, who are nutrition coaches and dietitians, and I help them with their coaching businesses, is it's cutting the line. Like, the expression of, think about like you're waiting to get into like a really cool club or whatever in New York City, since I know you're from Buffalo, and there's this massive line, and you can sit out there in the freezing cold New York winter and you can wait for 3 hours, or you can invest, you can cut the line, go straight to the front and move ahead. That's what mentorship is, man. That's why it's invaluable to do that early on, especially.
Yeah. So where did you start looking for your mentors? I mean, where you had the idea pop in your head. How did you get started down that path?
Totally. So it all began with free content. And this is why like this kind of works so well, is the giving with the free vibe first. So, I was 18 years old. I was struggling to sell personal training. So I went on YouTube and I searched how to sell personal training. And Bedros Keuilian videos just came up all over the place. Like, he was killing it at the time for that keyword ranking. He probably still is. So I started just consuming for years. 18 years old, started consuming this guy's free content. I got in his email list. I purchased a product or two from him. And it took me till the age of 25, so literally 7 years later, until I made the big 5-figure investment with him. And I still work with him to this day. So I advise anyone to do that. Like, start with free content, consume free content first, and then build up from there. As you start to know, like, and trust that person, then you can move into, higher figure investments.
Okay, cool. So let's start diving into your background as a dietitian now, because I definitely want to highlight some of your expertise there. So, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of practical, actionable advice on your podcast and on your blog. I guess what do you see are the most common pitfalls with both your clients and maybe some of the other misleading information out there? What do you see wrong with the advice that's out there, I guess?
Totally, man. That's a great question. And we can go on for hours about this, but
yeah.
Really, I think the main thing that my clients for nutrition, when they come to me, what they're struggling with is anxiety of overwhelm. Just we're in the information age in 2018, right? Like, go Google weight loss right now, and there's literally millions of pieces of content. And one person's going to say keto, one person's going to say intermittent fasting, then one person's going to say keto's total garbage, you need carbohydrates, then one person's going to say flexible dieting. So here you are, the end user, right? Maybe you're a lawyer, a stay-at-home mom, you're a manager or whatever, and it's like, all of this is like trying to read Japanese to you, right? And you speak English. It's like just anxiety of overwhelm, and it paralyzes you to do nothing at all. So really what I've learned over the years, and I was definitely not good at this at first, but I'm very kind of blessed to be good at this point, is just destructing all the clutter that's out there and giving my clients like actionable things of what they need to do, creating nutrition protocols that are sustainable, realistic, and fit into my client's lifestyle. Like, I want my clients to feel like every day when they're doing their nutrition program, for them to feel like I can do this for the rest of my life. And I have not given up the things in my life, my non-negotiables, with my family, my friends, the lifestyle I want to live to meet this program. It's a total synergy of these things. My lifestyle, my nutrition, they fit together.
Awesome. So yeah, that plays into a bit of a mindset that I have, is like, there's so many people out there telling us what we should or should not do, instead of just sharing, hey, this is what works for me. Here's what's worked for a similar client. It's not, nothing out there is, set in stone, or like, hey, this is my way or the highway. And, people like that quickly lose credibility with me. So totally. Yeah, I mean, I just, I'm really jiving with, your style there. So what are some of the biggest improvements that, or problems you've helped your clients overcome? Because nutrition is big in my life, because since I've got my nutrition on point, I don't think it's no coincidence that I have not got sick for almost 2 years now. But I guess, what are some of the big hurdles you've helped your clients overcome?
Totally, man. So yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. There's definitely a direct correlation there of when you nail your nutrition, it improves so many areas of your life, not just your aesthetics or your performance in the gym, but outside of that as well, right? So yeah, the big thing, I've always worked mainly with women. I don't know why. It's just kind of always been that way since I was 18 as a trainer. So my main thing is, now I mainly help women break those, like you said, pseudoscience claims out there around nutrition. So I work a lot with performance-based individuals, so CrossFitters, even just, like I said, weekend warriors, so like busy moms who like to do Tough Mudders or just, do marathons, stuff like that. Yeah. And the number one thing I see that's so prevalent when I get new clients is they are overtraining and undernourishing their body. Mm-hmm. And it's because of the fear, and it's not their fault. It's not women's fault. It's what the media has put out, all the bad information is put out there, that it gets women into this mindset that they need to work out 1 to 2 hours per day, do excessive cardio, all that, and eating above 1,200 calories is just going to make them bulky and make them blow up like the Michelin Man. So it's helping them overcome that mindset and teaching women to fuel their bodies inside the gym, outside the gym, and just helping them realize just how strong women really are.
Yeah. So I guess what happens to the body when you overtrain and undernourish? What were you seeing with folks like that?
Dude, that's a great question. So it all comes back to, and now I can kind of like play into my dietetics field.
Yeah.
It all comes back to your body is built for a fancy $3 word that's called homeostasis, which
Yep.
means it's built to resist change. Your body hates change. So you have to understand that when you are training intensely, which is a stress, it's a stress to the body. It's a good stress because it gets stronger. It induces what's called hypertrophy. So it builds muscle, increases strength, all that good stuff. But nevertheless, it's a stress. When you are putting your body through the constant rigors of training intensely, not fueling your body, which usually comes with not sleeping properly, dealing with stress, all those other things, especially now if you start to add alcohol in there and not proper nutrition and caffeine and all that crap, it just starts to really build up. And here's your body going through all this stress, and then you're eating low calories as well. Your body's going to resist that change after a certain point. It will produce results initially, but we're talking more about people who have like yo-yo dieted now, people who have lost weight by going on a low calorie diet that wasn't sustainable, gaining it back and then trying to do it again over and over. Sooner or later, your body just says, screw this, I'm done. I'm going to put these like metaphorical roadblocks in place and resist change. So that's one of the biggest premises for anyone who's listening to this right now to understand is your body is not built to be lean and muscular. Believe it or not, we are very efficient at storing and creating body fat. That's our survival mechanism. Just like I alluded to earlier with my story, money in the bank was like survival for me. It was like, it's like survival currency for your body. Stored body fat is that survival currency. We are, even though it's 2018, man, we are very primitively hardwired physiologically. Right. So your body is very good at resisting change and storing body fat, because back in caveman days, if they did go without food for a period of time, the body had to become so efficient, so resilient with taking in calories, storing it as body fat, adapting its metabolism to slow down to this period of not having food and being able to sustain. Or if we didn't have that, we would have perished as a species. So we still have that to today. Your body is very good at resisting change, and it prefers to store body fat compared to walking around shredded.
Yeah. So I guess what are some telltale signs, like someone listening to that, like is starting to question, man, am I under eating and overtraining? What are some of the telltale signs that might be happening?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So number one, before we even get to all that, I would say the most important thing anyone can take away from this, if they're looking to improve their nutrition, is to create awareness. It's a proven statistic that most Americans underestimate what they consume and overestimate what they do. Okay. So they overestimate their expenditure and all that. So the number one thing you can do is create awareness. Awareness always comes before change. So my number one tip, no matter where I'm at, podcasts like this, talking on stage, whatever, is to create awareness by just tracking your intake for 5 to 7 days. That single action, if you're not already doing that, will have more impact on your life than anything, than me educating you about, hormones, physiology, biochemistry, anything, because you will become aware with exactly what you're putting in your body. Maybe you think you're under eating, but you totally forget to log those couple of beers on the weekend and those Reese's cups you had and the slices of pizza. And then you start to log and you say, wow, I'm eating on average 3,000 calories per day. Yeah. Right. And I'm eating majority carbohydrates and fats, and my protein is very low. So number one, awareness precedes change. You always have to start with that. But for someone, let's say, who maybe is tracking their intake, back to your question now, they are tracking their intake and they are really are under fueling their body. The telltale signs would just be the stress, man. So maybe you're training, and I see this a lot with the CrossFitters. They're training so intensely in the gym, but they just feel like they are running out of gas. They are running out of energy in the midway through their workouts. They are feeling so under recovered. So like they leave the workouts and they are just wiped out. Like they need to go take a nap afterwards. Their sleep is all sorts of messed up. Their energy throughout the day, they're finding themselves relying a lot on external stimulants like caffeine, energy drinks, things like that. Some caffeine's fine. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. It's actually like very good for you as an ergogenic aid. But those types of things, if you look at your progress in the gym over the last 6 months and you haven't seen those noticeable steps forward, that's how you can definitely start to now look at, and your training's on point. You need to look at the nutrition at that point then.
Yeah. I just got done with going through my CrossFit level 1 not certification, coaching training this past weekend. Sure. And that was one of the big topics that they talked about is overtraining, and that a lot of these CrossFit gyms are going through and they're doing a strength portion and then they follow it up with a Metcon, and they've been a big proponent of, slowing things down. Just, if you're going to do strength, just do strength one day, forget the Metcon, and, less tends to be more. And I'm definitely noticing a big difference, slowing things down. I used to be one of those guys that, I get, 2 days in, I do my strength in the morning, then I do, 2-hour, go ruck session, in the evening. But, I've stopped doing that. I've started to really just mix things up and slow things down. And I just want to back up what you said, that I'm noticing, definitely a big change in my results by slowing things down a little bit and paying more attention to even more attention to my nutrition.
Love that, man. And that's the biggest thing is so when you did that, what, do you mind if I ask, what prompted you to take a step back and slow things down? Because we're so go, I need to train harder, what prompted you to do that?
I just noticed that I was constantly sore. I wasn't recovering from my workouts as fast, and my energy was there and my sleep was there. It was just simply that, my muscles weren't recovering.
Totally.
Like they should. So I was like, maybe I'm doing way too much.
Yeah. That's a telltale sign, man. If your body, if your body's just not recovering and you're getting that deep muscle soreness, and especially for someone who's been training for a while, soreness is not an indicator of progress. It's actually an indicator of microscopic trauma in the muscle. So if you're getting that deep muscle soreness and especially if you're starting to go into the joints as well, that's just that extensive acute inflammation from training, which just means the body's going through it's going through an extensive recovery process, and you have to take your foot off the gas pedal. That's probably the biggest thing, man, that most people don't understand with their training. And again, it's not their fault, it's just the media, right? Doesn't educate on these things. But it's sometimes when you want to move forward, you have to take one step back to take 2 steps forward.
Absolutely. So I guess what is that ideal? I know there's not a one size fit all, but do you have some 1 or 2 maybe guidelines that you can throw out for our listeners that hey, if you do these 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 3 things, make sure you're doing all 3 of these things. This will kind of the old 80-20 rule, get you 80% of the way there.
Sure. For nutrition, you mean?
Nutrition or fitness. It can be either or.
Yeah, definitely. So you're absolutely right. It's completely variable for the individual. I think anyone, and you alluded to this perfectly, anyone who gets out there and says, this is the way to do it, everyone needs to do it this way, keto is 100% the way to do it for everyone, fasting is 100% the way to do it for everyone, they're full of crap. It's not true. The best program with nutrition is the one that you personally enjoy and the one that you can stick to. So with that being said, I think some bare bone basics are, number 1, making sure that you are not giving up things in your lifestyle that will not be conducive for your success. So one of the things I asked during my onboarding process with any nutrition client, they fill out a very extensive questionnaire, and then I create their starting program after that, after I assess them, is, hey, what are your non-negotiables? What are things you need to have to make this program sustainable for you? And the answers can vary from, I need to have a date night once per week with my partner. I need to have a glass of wine 3 times per week with dinner. And it's so important to incorporate that. So many people go militaristic on their diets. I'm cutting out all alcohol, all sugar, all of the fun foods, and I'm going to the gym 7 days per week. And they start off really strong with that, but then they find themselves faltering on motivation because they went too black or white with it. It's either I'm all in or I'm all off, and just realizing that that's not the successful way of going about it. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is just, I would say, protein needs. Most people that come to me, usually men, it's not an issue. It's honestly, sometimes men are consuming too much protein, too little carbs. So adjusting that, but just making sure your protein needs are met, and then figuring out those other 2 macronutrients based on personal preferences from there.
Okay. So we're starting to run a little short on time here, man, but I want to make sure I left some time here at the end for folks to, know how to get in touch with you, and, if they're interested in maybe working with you, how can they do that?
Dude, absolutely. So first off, I just want to say thank you so much to you to having me on this platform. Thank you for creating this platform, the impact you're creating. Thank you to everyone who listened to me. The most important thing I can leave anyone with is everything I just gave you will not work unless you take action on it.
Yeah.
Right. So consuming information is good, but like I said, no matter where you're at, if it's entrepreneurial, business, fitness, just take action on one of the things I gave you, and that will move you forward. But yeah, man, I love connecting with people. So you can find me on Instagram. It's just at Tony_Stephan, Stephan. Go follow me there. Send me a direct message. I love hearing from people. My website is Tony Stephan Dietitian, which is spelled very challenging. So I'll just give you the link for that. .com. So yeah, you can email is Tony Stephan dietitian @gmail.com, but you can connect with me on any of those platforms.
Awesome, man. I'll definitely drop links in the show notes for the listeners to have easy access and not have any excuses why they can't get in touch with you. And
Totally.
Again, man, this was a great conversation, and we touched on a lot of different stuff, and appreciate your perspectives. And man, looking forward to staying in touch with you down the road here.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, sir.
Alrighty.
Thank you for tuning in to the Zero Excuses podcast. Join the conversation at kenyonzitska.com in our Facebook group. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to our show. We'll talk to you next week. And always remember, results, not excuses.